Welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, my name's Chris Sonnenday, and on behalf of the Memorial Committee and the Transplant-Survival Flight, I'd like to welcome you all to this incredible day. It's awesome to see the crowd like this. June 4th, 2007. It's almost impossible to believe that it's been 10 years since that time. A few things I remember about that day is that it was very similar to today. It was a beautiful day, clear skies. June 4th was a Monday in 2007, so the medical center was in its full chaotic swing. And then it seemed like all time stopped. And for many of us, the rest of the next several days to weeks is a total blur. On the one hand, vivid memories of interactions with colleagues, learning more about the details of the crash, and attending the funerals of these brave individuals. On the other hand, it seemed like a flash. As we began to consider how to honor the 10-year anniversary of this event, we believed we needed to do something a little more formal and substantial as a community. Every year, as you may know, we take time and there's a service by the monument like we're going to do later today. But we believed we needed to put together a more formal program. This was in part because as we realized as we spoke more with each other about that day, we realized that for many of us, time has not done much to soften the blows of that time. Our grief about our colleagues and the impact they had on the institution and our programs has become part of the story of our life here at Michigan. This, in fact, has become, for many of us, kind of an indelible scar, but at the same time, an incredible motivator behind the sanctity and importance of our mission of providing life-saving transplants to as many of our recipients as possible. We also realized that as time has passed, there are many now new talented colleagues and team members who were not here in 2007 when this event happened. And so for them, the events of June 4th are only a reference or perhaps a story that they once heard. And we wanted to make sure that the story of the team we lost that day is told to everyone who works here because it's part of the fabric of our story and critical to our mission. The video that we created that you will see today was created in part to mark this specific 10-year anniversary, but also so that we would have a reproducible way to tell the story of the events of that day, with our intention to show that video to newly added members of the team, to the Transplant Center, Cardiovascular Center, Survival Flight. We intend to keep a copy of this video on our website. It will be available on Sunday, and to use it in the orientation of new faculty and staff. One of the hardest pieces for many of us processing the events of that day was the confusion and guilt about why it happened that day to that team, to those men. It really could have been any of us, at least to those of us involved in the work of procurement. It was in many ways the randomness of the call schedule and the individuals who volunteered that day to go on that procurement that determined which of these families suffered now this loss. It could have been any of us, but ultimately it was not any of us. It was 6 brave, passionate, inspiring men who we are here to honor today. You will hear some personal reflections today on these individuals and their impact on us this afternoon, their legacy from each of the speakers, but I want to formally recognize each of them today. I have to say that one of the things that we did not anticipate as we put together this tribute today was, which we felt we needed to do for our community here at Michigan Medicine, was the incredible response we received from the families of the individuals that died that day. There are literally 50 family members here today sharing this with us. And if you didn't get a white flower, please let us know. We will get you one. As I tell you about the 6 men we lost on June 4th, I will recognize their family members and loved ones as best I can who've joined us today. So this is David Ashburn. David was a brilliant and talented cardiac surgeon, originally from Bristol, Tennessee, near the Smoky Mountains. He had joined us here at Michigan from Wake Forest to train in cardiac surgery, and he was actually 2 weeks away from starting his pediatric cardiac surgery fellowship, which was his destination and goal professionally. He was an award-winning scholar, a gifted technical surgeon, but moreover admired for his absolute kindness and humble demeanor, which he shared with friends, colleagues, team members, and patients alike. One of my favorite stories about him is that when he was at Wake Forest, he won the Employee of the Month award, which was the only time a physician had ever won that award. The nurses in the room are not surprised by that. He was a turkey hunter, which was interestingly something I found out he even listed on his CV. And he was really beloved here by the cardiac surgery team. He was a son, husband, and dedicated father of 3 children. We are joined today by his parents, Marie and Alan Ashburn. Richard. So it's easy to talk about Richard in transplant center activity because he was like the MVP of the transplant center. And he was the face of the center, literally. He had worked at the University of Michigan since 1985 in various roles, but found his place in the transplant center as an organ donation specialist. He was so admired and respected not only for his skill and expertise in organ donation and procurement, but also for the incredible ability he had to comfort and reassure grieving donor families. He was a master at guiding them through that most difficult of gifts. He was recognized in 2006 by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services with a Medal of Honor for his contributions of increasing donation at U of M, an effort that he spearheaded personally and passionately. Believe it or not, he may have actually won more awards outside of the hospital, where he was a respected track coach in the community and actually was just off of a state runner-up championship the week prior to the accident. One funny story about Richard that I think captures his spirit is once he and I were once going on a liver procurement, and we decided that we had like 20 minutes, so we would walk to the cafeteria and get lunch. And so we were walking from the transplant surgery faculty offices, which were at that time in the second floor Taubman, to the cafeteria. It's like a 2-minute walk, right? It took us 45 minutes. We were half an hour late to the procurement, and we never ate anything. But that's because Richard knew everybody in the building, and everybody wanted to talk to him. We are honored to be joined today by his mother, Berna, nephew, Paul, sister, Giselle, daughter, Kayla, and Cheryl Shoemaker. Dennis Hoist. Dennis was known to everyone who crossed his path as a kind man with a great sense of humor. He loved to fly, and he was particularly proud of flying for Marlin Air and Survival Flight. He was a volunteer pilot for Wings of Mercy, which, as some of you may know, is a free air transportation service that offers travel to patients with limited income in need of medical care at a distance, and includes actually many of our transplant recipients from the UP and other parts far away. He was an avid sports fan, unfortunately of Michigan State, and outdoorsman who loved hunting and fishing trips with his family and friends. He was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather of 7 at the time of his death. Many of his extended family are here today, including his wife, Venice, son Brad, and his wife Kristen and daughter, his daughter Robin Messman and her sons Bryce and Adam, his daughter Tammy Hoyes Ritter and son-in-law Dennis Ritter, as well as Sharon Meadows, Kim Riedel, Brittany Riedel, and Jordan Riedel. Rick Lepenzi. It's, by the way, no coincidence that all the saved pictures we have of Rick look like this. He had two great passions in life beyond his family, being a firefighter, where he served the Van Buren Township in Ypsilanti, and flying. He loved to help people, and one of the reasons, actually, that he became an organ donation specialist on our team part-time was that it would combine his desire to care for others with an opportunity to fly. On June 4th, he actually volunteered to go on that procurement to get more training from Richard so he could become independent in lung procurements. He was known as a prankster, which I suffered from a couple times on procurements, and had collections of model fire trucks and model airplanes. He loved his work and loved being a team member. That was clear when working with him. He was a wonderful son, brother, husband, and father. Joining us today are his wife, Claudia, his sons, Brennan and Derek, and many other loved ones, including Leah, Lauren, Clarence, Ed and Sharon Manier, Bill, Angela, Paige, Kendall, Aaron, and Lucy Buey. Bill Serra. Bill was the chief pilot for Marlin Air, with an incredible record of hours and experience in the air. He had a background in the military, and later in life flew supply missions as a civilian in Desert Storm, for which he was recognized with the Air Force Desert Storm and Desert Shield Award for his service in 1993. I flew many times with him on organ procurements. He was always enthusiastic, even at ridiculous hours of the night when he shouldn't have been. He loved his work. He loved hearing about our work. He was a pleasure to be around. He was a caring, compassionate man who loved people. And perhaps the greatest testament to him is that it's not possible for me to read the names of all the people that are here on his behalf today. There's like 25. But I would comment on his wife, Debbie, daughter, Jen, and son, Bill. Martin Spoor. Martin was a gifted and respected member of our cardiac surgery faculty. I had actually forgotten, but he was born in Pennsylvania, although he grew up largely in the Netherlands and Canada. And if you knew Martin, he inherited all the best qualities of those countries. He was kind, he was adventurous, he was nice, he was wicked smart, and he was completely unflappable. I got to know him on organ procurements and in the ICU, where he served as an attending. Two chaotic environments where Martin was always the coolest head in the room. He also loved the outdoors and was a hockey fanatic. But those who knew Martin best said his spirit was best captured to watch him with his children. They are here with us today, along with his wife and brother. Thank you. I will just close my comments by saying that as we put this program together, we did receive some feedback from the families, and one of the things that they were happy to hear that we were doing this is that it was a testament to them that their family members were not being forgotten. So I would just ask that we all recognize the family members that are here. It's incredible how many are here. And I would say to those of you that have joined us, if you turn around and look at this room, you can tell how important this is to us. So, thank you. So we are going to move to some reflections from various members of the leaders of our team, and as well as the video that I mentioned. It's now my honor to introduce Dr. John McGee, transplant surgeon, professor of surgery, and the director of the Transplant Center, to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Chris. I would like to extend my welcome on behalf of all the faculty and staff to everyone on this special day of remembrance to our 6 incredible colleagues. Many in the audience knew them as husbands, fathers, sons, brothers, and family, and I'd like to especially welcome you for being here. In the audience, too, are many University of Michigan team members who knew and cherished your loved ones almost like family member. And as Chris pointed out, there are also faculty and staff here who never met them but know what they mean to all of us. We are here to remember them, we are here to honor them, and contemplate to what they meant to us as both individuals and as a team. Perhaps most importantly, we should reflect what they taught us. There are days when I walk outside and look at the weather and appreciate that Ann Arbor is really a special place, maybe the best place on earth, and I think today is one of those days. It is the sky, it is the warmth, it is the breeze, and it's all the green. And after I get over that warm, fuzzy feeling of the rebirth of spring and the sense of hope and wonder, I realize that a lot of that special feeling is actually being part of a great team and the people I'm lucky to be surrounded by. Just like this remembrance, the weather sometimes remembers you about how lucky you are to work with people. Some of these special people are on the committee that organized this remembrance. I'd like to give them special recognition. One reason is because it's my job to say thank you, guys. But the other is that they really, as I was thinking about it, they really highlight what we're talking about here. The committee members came from different teams from across our health system. They all have different roles, yet they were able to come together and make something good happen. They don't represent any group. They represent purpose. They represent mission worthy of effort. And they represented that very well. That is a very special thing, and just like the individuals we are here to remember, they did it as well. I believe transplantation is very special, and I'm very lucky to be part of it. We get to help patients and their families in a profound way. Transplantation is about hope, the chance to possibly restore life. Transplantation is also a tale very much about the individual. It is about the courage and determination of the patient. It's about the courage and generosity of the donor and their family, and it's also about the individuals who make it all happen. Each person brings special skills, and that needs to be done very well. We get to work with lots of amazing people who are really, really good at what they do. Most also really like what they do. And they also are generally very nice, because the only way you can do what needs to be done in a team is to work well with others. Good at your job, really liking what you do, and being nice. That shouldn't be that hard, but it's uncommon in most of the world that when you see it, you really need to recognize it as special. We should appreciate it and learn from it. All 6 men brought this to everything they did. We would all be well served to try and bring these ideals into our lives. Transplantation is also about the need for a great team of individuals and showcases all the good that can be done when people work together. I have worked with all 6 of the men, and they were all amazing. Great individuals make great teams. As this event was being organized, I would get updates from the committee. They did such a great job, I didn't listen to everything they said, and I think this is a true story, and as Chris, actually after Chris's comments, I'm sure it's true. Somebody related that a friend or family member expressed some surprise that we were remembering this and wanted to do something 10 years later. And I can easily appreciate how one would assume this, that as time would pass and impact would lessen, there are certainly many things, institutions, and sometimes people forget or under-recognize that we really shouldn't. This happens every day, but we are not going to let it happen here. We discuss and remember the team and the individuals with all our new staff at every quarterly transplant center orientation. We want to remember them and think about what they have taught us by how they lived. I believe we remember because of the profound impact all 6 had. Some of the impact is certainly a sense of loss, but most of what they represent is a sense of purpose and intent in how they did things and how they lived their life. They were genuine. Over the years, this experience has taught me many things. It includes the fact that it's often impossible to really tell what one person means to another. It is also very easy to underappreciate the impact we all have on one another. All 6 men touched lots of people in very positive ways that is worthy of remembrance and emulating. I still find this day when I walk around the hospital and see old friends who I've probably never even talked about this to, that I get a story of profound impact. And I can tell this is a profound impact by the richness and the depth and the smiles that I get when people talk about them. Sometimes this represents even short chats, but it is always memorable. The people that these people interacted with made a mark. I don't think it's an overstatement to say this changed people. We all should strive to leave such positive memories. I also know that this impact was not restricted to their time at work. Several times a year, I meet somebody who asks me what I do, and when they learn it, they ask me if I knew their friend or coworker. When I say yes, again, I am treated to a rich, memorable story of impact. I can also tell you that outside the University of Michigan, these fine men are also remembered by the transplant teams across the United States. After the accident, we sponsored a national meeting in an effort to further minimize risk associated with travel related to organ donation. I believe this has made a difference around the country. We get calls even today about what we do and how we handle various concerns. Transplantation in the United States thinks about our team every day. They were all incredible. They did so much good, and the lessons they continued to teach us show that effort. They prove the effort of caring individuals dedicated to making a difference in even one person's life. It is a lesson they teach us, and it is a lesson for us to continue to remember. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Jamie Roberts. Jamie is a social worker and the manager of the social work team for the Transplant Center here, one of our truly greatest resources. She's going to share some of the work that has been done in honor of some of the team members and then introduce the memorial video. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Today, I am honored and humbled to be here to talk about how the lives and the legacies of these 6 gentlemen and heroes continue to live on through making a difference in the lives and of our patients and families each and every day. We at Transplant know what it means to make a difference for those that we serve. It is our passion, it is our calling, and it is why we do what we do. I want to talk about 3 memorial funds that were established by the generous donations of family members in honor of their loved ones, and how these funds have truly gone on to make a difference in the lives for our patients and our families. The Hoist Fund. Through this fund, we've been able to sponsor 6 children per year to attend Camp Mishatanki, our transplant camp. This fund has sponsored 63 lucky and happy campers over these last 10 years. And if any of you have ever seen the Camp Mishatanki videos or been lucky enough to attend camp, you witness firsthand how this camp makes a difference for these kids. The Spore Fund. Through the Spore Fund, we will dedicate a nature center at Camp Mishatanki in memory of Martin. This will provide thousands of children the opportunity to learn about and have an appreciation for the natural environment and setting surrounding North Star Reach, which is now the home of Camp Mishatanki. I understand that Martin had a long-lasting love of camp and really liked teepees. So we're planning to construct a large teepee to be used as a nature center classroom in his honor. We hope to have this completed sometime this year. And lastly, the Chennault Fund. This fund was established to help, and I quote, very ill children and adults to relieve fear, stress, anxiety, and the financial burdens that accompany the role of being a patient and/or caregiver. To this date, we've been able to help 288 patients and families for a total of $33,177. This fund has been used to help those in need with such things as lodging, prescriptions, utilities and rent, transportation, meal assistance, medical equipment, and even gas cards to help patients and families get to their appointments. Talk about making a difference for others. Through these funds, their legacy continues to live on, helping others that are in need. So as we talk about the legacies left behind, we at the Transplant wanted to honor in a very visible and tangible way what that legacy looks like, what this time in our history has meant, and what it continues to mean. And as Chris talked about, related to that, we have developed this video that we will be sharing with you today. And because we know that as time marches on, there will be fewer and fewer of us who were here that day, June 4th, 2007. And we want all to know who come to work at the Transplant Center and Cardiovascular Center about that day and what it meant. And with this, as Chris shared, we will be sharing this video at our Transplant Center and Cardiovascular Center new employee orientation, so those at Michigan Medicine will never forget.
On June 4th, 2007, our transplant team received the terrible news that one of our recovery teams had gone down in a plane crash when they were traveling over Lake Michigan.
The scope of the plane crash in Lake Michigan is coming into focus tonight as we learn about the people feared lost in a life-saving mission.
It was a beautiful blue sky day, not a day when you would think something so tragic would happen.
I was the coordinator on call. We had received a donor offer from Wisconsin for a set of lungs for one of our recipients. I contacted Dr. Chang and discussed the donor case with him. He was interested in it. We identified a recipient and contacted the recipient and proceeded with calling the hospital and the ICUs and our normal workup process. I was driving home on June 4th and I received a page from Carl in the dispatch office. He proceeded to say, "I need you to pull the car over now." It was the way he said it, and I knew something was wrong. Carl proceeded to tell me that there had been an accident and the plane had crashed in Lake Michigan.
When I first heard the news from our dispatcher, I had to ask him to repeat it. It can't possibly happen to us because we're safe. So the whole definition of safety haunted me. What did we do wrong? Or is it something we do wrong? And that question went around in my mind and the minds of all of us for a long time.
Transplant Center does about 350 to 400 transplants a year, and so on any given day, our teams are out recovering organs.
When we list a patient for transplant, their chances of having problems or dying from their disease is worse than the risk of dying from the transplantation. We get a donor that's matched to that particular recipient, and once you've decided that on paper the donor looks okay to use, then we have to send a team out to evaluate the organs, the lungs in this case, and also then to procure the organs. Depending on the distance that they have to travel, we'll often have the recipient in the operating room awake, but waiting to hear from the donor team that the organs are okay to use. So for this particular patient, we had the patient in the operating room and we heard from the team that everything was good to go. They had finished the procurement and were heading back.
When I got off the phone with Carl, my first reaction was to call Dr. Chang in the OR because I knew that they had already started the surgery. When I contacted the operating room, the scrub nurse answered the phone and I asked to talk to Dr. Chang. She had said that he was busy, he couldn't talk right now. And I said, no, I need to speak to him now. She said to him, Dr. Chang, Jenny's on the phone and she's crying.
So after I got off the phone with Jenny, that day is pretty much a blur. I must have told the team somehow, right? Because I had to tell them to stop everything that we were doing. And so at that point, our role was to make sure that we could get our patient closed up and stabilized so we could get up to the intensive care unit.
We do drills every year in survival flight in our airplane and in our rotor wing. And we never thought it would be anybody but survival flight staff. And so to have it go beyond to our stakeholders and our colleagues it left us like, how do we help? How do we deal with this?
One of the most difficult things of that night was trying to make sure that the families were notified correctly, that the other people in the transplant center, the other people in the other departments knew, and how fast it happened, how quickly it was on the news.
Coming up to 19 minutes after the hour, news just in from the Coast Guard.
There is a tragic story in the Midwest tonight of people rushing to save a life and then lost their own lives.
We're hearing a transplant team from the University of Michigan was on board. We're talking about 2 crew members.
Couldn't catch up to it fast enough to get the calls made before people heard it. We were very surprised by when we walked out of our office at one point and it was already on the news out in the hallway. We didn't realize it had gotten out that fast.
Once we knew that it was no longer a search and rescue, it really took a whole different turn in terms of notifying families, how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, trying to be as sensitive as possible. I worked with the coroner's office in terms of Wisconsin, and I met with the families to talk about what had happened and what to expect, even though it was really hard. And sitting with their grief is probably one of the hardest things you can do as a social worker.
I think what we do for a living does affect how you react to something like this. I don't feel like I can say if it's a good thing that we deal with tragedy every day or a bad thing. In fact, my daughter wrote a poem about, in the mornings, I would wake her up by tapping on the door, and it really was because I was trying to avoid waking up her brother who didn't need to get up yet. Anyway, it was a poem, but it was about this tapping. But then she drew in the fact that some people somewhere, their dad who had gone out to try to save someone else's life, wasn't there to tap on their door.
Those of us involved in that particular patient's care were kind of held up by the fact that we had to get him transplanted, that we had to finish this. It wasn't, we couldn't let anything happen to him because if we lost the recipient as well, it would be more devastation and that it all happened for no reason. I think there was a sense of relief once we actually got that transplant taken care of and done, and then continuing to care for him. Towards the end of the week started when we had to start going to funerals. And going to friends' funerals day after day is very hard. It's very devastating, but you had to be there and you had to honor them.
There were tears and, you can imagine all of the aspects of a terrible loss and grieving that went on for years. It still goes on. It's difficult even to this day for people to talk about it.
In the weeks after the tragedy, I was astonished by the number of phone calls I got from around the country and around the world, because transportation is such a ubiquitous part of organ transplantation, and everyone understands that there's risk involved. I think everyone can feel that the Grim Reaper passed their doorstep and happened to stop at ours.
You realized how widely their presence affected the hospital, how many different areas knew these men and were grieving the same way we were, and everyone was, in shock that way. I think it's one of those things that when you work in transplant for a long period of time, you kind of always know it can happen, but it's never supposed to happen to you.
On any given day, different transplant team can be going out on an organ recovery, and it's really chilling to think about the possibility of that tragedy happening again.
I think one of the difficult things that people dealt with that week was that it could have been anyone on that flight. The call schedule rotates every single day. If someone's not available, we call the next person and see who's available. It was difficult for our group because we realized we're the ones that are calling and asking them to go and do this. So there was the realization that kind of that feeling of we put them on that flight. I understand it's my job to do that, but it's hard. It's very hard.
I think everyone that works in the transplant center knows what they're getting themselves into, whether it's in terms of working with patients, the lengths of the operation, needing to go on procurement runs, working with patients' families, and all of those are rewarding aspects of the field. Despite all the difficulties that come up with patient care all the time, there's enough reward, enough fulfillment, and for each individual person, that reward versus risk-benefit is positive.
Does it take a special person to do what we do in survival flight and organ procurement? I like to say no, because I think no matter what the job is here, when you're there for patients and families, any job is special. But part of me has to tell you, yes, that there is a difference, but it's a risk that people are willing to do because it's all about patients and being able to provide them with the quality of care for the rest of their life.
Transplant gives you that kind of gratification of really changing someone's life, and we all have a piece of that, from the people that check people into the front desk to the surgeons in the OR, and that's very important. It's very important for everyone to understand that their little piece matters in the end.
The challenge of transplantation is that you're removing a diseased organ, a bad lung, and putting in a new organ, a new lung. And it's always amazing to watch a lung that's been sitting in the cold for many hours start to work and start to support the patient again. Watching someone come off of oxygen and be able to talk to me without being short of breath is really probably one of the biggest rewards that you can get.
People at Michigan Medicine really care about people. They care about patients and families, but they also care about each other.
People train for literally decades to be able to care for transplant patients. It takes a person who has a level of compassion and selflessness to be able to connect with patients who are in end-stage organ failure, and really, transplant is the only option they have left.
To have a long career in transplant is because you love it. When people ask me what I do for a living, I love telling them what I do for a living. It's an exhausting, it's a stressful job, but the fact that I have this little piece of changing someone's life for the better, it means everything. To me, it's a privilege to be able to do what I do.
So the legacy of the folks that we lost on that day, Survival Flight has its mandatory safety day, but we also start our day with their picture and flowers, just as a gentle reminder, so that they're here with us in spirit.
As long as anyone that was here at the time is still around and associated with the center, it's going to be part of them. As time goes by, of course, there'll be some people that were here at the time and some people that weren't, and I think that major events like this, in order for those groups to work together, the people that are new need to understand what the people that were here went through.
The staff were really hurting, and so we put together Grief Week. People can write all over the walls on our hallways, our glass, and they write messages to people that they've lost. As a way to commemorate our colleagues, we put together a group of people, including some families, to be on a committee to look at developing some tribute to them. It's right outside the main entrance, and you can see it all the time. It changes with the wind. You know, it's got movement in the art. Inside the building is the team and what happened and why that piece of art is so important to us.
It's been 10 years since the crash, and I think it's something I think about, especially when transplants come around. Whenever I go to Lake Michigan, I try to at least step into the water, just because I think about those guys. When they went out, I know that they had no idea, of course, what was going to happen. What I hope that anyone who looks back on this thinks about is that everything that we do has risks, and we have to make sure our families are prepared for that we're prepared for that.
I think the thing that hits us every year, those of us that were here, is how raw it still is, how much it feels like it still was yesterday. And that seems to never get better. It's not going away.
The memories are softened now, and what I take with me really on a day-to-day basis are the lessons that we learned from the lives of our friends and colleagues who we lost that day. I will never forget them. They were funny, they were selfless, they were here for our patients, they were fathers and brothers and uncles and our colleagues and friends, and they made a huge impact in the world. The lives that they saved and the joy that they brought to others, I'll never forget. On June 4th, 2000.
I would thank the members of the committee who put a lot of work into planning that video, and I think it was really well done. I want to correct an oversight, which is completely my fault. One of Bill Sarah's children that I didn't mention, Nico Sarah, is here, and I am so sorry that I didn't mention your name individually, personally. We've asked 2 additional leaders in the Transplant Center to share their reflections on the accident and the legacy of our team members. Dr. Andrew Chang is a thoracic and lung transplant surgeon, is the chief of section of thoracic surgery, and as you saw in the video, is the transplant surgeon who was performing the lung transplant on that day. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. First, I'd like to add my thanks for the work of our organizing committee, all of whom have been coming together for the past year to prepare for this day. I think their efforts reflect the dedication of the Transplant Center that I've seen over the years to regroup and rebuild after that terrible day, in being deliberate and thoughtful about how to revamp our programs, our processes to improve safety for everyone involved, our patients, our team members alike. While we all have carried on the work of these men, Dennis, Bill, Ricky, Richard, David, and Martin, on this day of remembrance, it is important to reflect on how much each of them continue to shape and influence our lives and those of our patients. It is equally, if not important, if not more important, to recognize the families who gave of themselves more than anyone ever could or would ask. We all grieve our loss, even 10 years later, but certainly not as much as suffered by you, the families, then and likely now. So this weekend, especially Sunday, June 4th, please take some time to think about your own work and how we each can continue to keep our center, our institution strong, and in doing so, maintaining the memory of these colleagues and these friends. Thanks.
Dr. Richard Prager is a cardiothoracic surgeon and is the director of the Frankel Cardiovascular Center here at the university. Dr. Prager.
Chris, thank you very much. And I want to, as well as everyone who has stood at this podium, thank everyone for coming and understand that this day, although it is 10 years ago, will not be forgotten here. And as you've heard from all the people in the Transplant Center, this is used, this video will be used, because these people are heroes for trying to save others' lives, and they will continue to be recognized. And so while all of us remember June 4th, 10 years ago, and what we were doing and why, and where we were, and Andrew, I remember walking into your room when my case finished and seeing your whole team sobbing. These are memories that you don't forget and never leave you, frankly. Those of us who call the CVC home have much less memory of the opening of that whole new building that occurred about 4 days after this. And so that entire opening of a 300,000 square foot building aspects of it are forgotten by most of us who did it and participated. And we actually almost canceled that opening because of what had happened to our colleagues and friends and associates just a few days before that. So that time is indeed a blur for all of us. And 10 years at the CVC doesn't in the least alter those memories. And in many ways, actually, it heightens the sense of why one misses their colleagues, friends, and associates and families who were lost. And certainly for those of us in the CVC today, we feel that this is a very heightened moment. Those of us here feel that. And perhaps this poem that was handed to me recently by a friend at a funeral of a dear friend of mine can help others in this room understand or try to realize that these people gave their lives so that others could live. And I will read this poem to you that I was handed to help console me about 2 weeks ago. So dry your eyes and remember me, not as I am now, but as I used to be, because I will remember you all and look on with a smile. Understand in your hearts, I've only gone to rest a little while. As long as I have the love of each of you, I can live my life in the hearts of all of you. So that helped me, and I hope it helps all of you. Thank you.
After we complete the program, anyone who is interested is welcome to join us at the memorial by the hospital entrance. Tom will guide us there in words. You're also welcome to stay here or in the reception area for as long as you would like. In closing, I'd like to introduce Tom Burdett, hospital chaplain and a great resource and friend to many of us at this time and many others.
I have a unique perspective from all of the other speakers. It's all right. It's appropriate. Everybody else that has spoken still works here. I retired in December, so I can reflect on it in a little different perspective. The dictionary defines hero as a person noted for courageous acts. I can tell you that these 6 men that morning, when they awoke, didn't wake up to become heroes. They awoke to do their jobs. They did them well. They always did them well. I assure you that each one of them would scoff at the idea of being called a hero. They'd lower their head and say, "It's nothing. I was just doing my job." And so the dictionary, I had to look a little further for a definition that fits today, because indeed we gather to honor our heroes. The dictionary defines a hero as a person who, in the opinion of others, has special achievements, abilities, or personal qualities, and is regarded as a role model or an ideal. That fits these 6 men. They were doing their jobs, and in the course of doing their jobs, they lost their lives so that others could live. As the other speakers talked about, that week that followed was a blur. I remember sitting with Rich and Bob Kelch and some of the other leadership as they mulled over the idea, should we postpone the opening and the dedication? And unanimously we agreed that each one of these men who died would want us to continue. They'd want us to continue because that was part of our jobs. That was part of our work. Today, as we honor our heroes, I suggest to you that all of us are heroic in what we do. we'd scoff at the idea. We'd say, I'm just doing my job. But when you think about what we do, it is heroic. We come in and give of ourselves, give of our time, our talent, to take that extra step, to go that little bit further, to truly make a difference in the lives of our patients, our families, our colleagues. To stay over to help someone, to come in early, to spend that extra moment listening, to comfort, to encourage, to strengthen. These 6 men were everyday heroes, just like each one of us is an everyday hero. In the jobs we do, in the relationships we have with our families and friends, each of us is a hero. Each of us performs heroic deeds. Today we honor the memory of 6 heroes. Tomorrow we live the heroic lives of our jobs and our unique gifts and talents. Let us pray. God of all peoples, creator of life, sustainer of life, and giver of eternity, we give you thanks for those that we remember. We give you thanks for their loves, for their service, for their friendship, for their dedication. We hold them dear in our hearts. We pray that you have blessed them with the gift of eternal life. And we pray your blessing be upon each and every person gathered here this day, and all who gather with us in spirit. Amen. As Chris said, it's my privilege to instruct you on how to get down to the memorial. Good luck. This place is a maze. It's easiest, though, if you go out through the lobby and then either take the elevators or the stairs right across in the Taubman Center down to the first floor. You can also take the escalator or the elevators across from the gift shop. And we'll gather at the memorial for a moment of silent remembrance and then another word of prayer. On behalf of the planning team, on behalf of everyone involved in this day, thank you for your presence as we celebrate the memory of these 6 heroes. Thank you.